A sleek aircraft violates restricted airspace, no ID, no flight plan, and no fear. Russian SU-57s are sent to intercept, but what starts as routine quickly spirals into chaos when a woman's voice breaks through on a channel no one's used in over a decade. In 10 words, she halts the skies, silences generals, and resurrects a name thought buried by black ops. Who is she? And why does the world still tremble when she speaks? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story might just be even more unbelievable. Captain Jenna Rhodes didn't flinch when the radar pinged red. She'd seen it all before. Blips that danced on the screen like drunken bugs, lost hobby pilots, malfunctioning transponders, arrogant tourists who wandered too close to restricted zones. But this one was different. No squawk, no beacon. Just a solid, deliberate line streaking across a patch of airspace that hadn't been touched in years. The restricted vector was sacred territory, imposed by decades of classified treaties, sealed by threats and protected by unspoken consequences. The kind of place where ghosts weren't just metaphors, they were policies. Unidentified bogey 0005. Altitude 27,000, heading west-northwest, no response to hails. The comms officer's voice was crisp, but Rhodes caught the underlying tremor. She couldn't blame him. Her F-22 Raptor cut through the air with lethal grace, flanked by Lieutenant Reeves in formation. Beneath her canopy, the digital instruments pulsed a silent rhythm, the kind that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. This wasn't a mistake. Whoever was in that aircraft knew exactly where they were, and they weren't running. "Command, we are visual," she said, leveling her voice through the headset. "Unknown aircraft is not broadcasting identification. Sleek fuselage, looks like a hybrid profile. Tail shape is Super Tucano, but that's not military grade, it's something else." There was a pause. Then Command replied, "Rules of engagement, shadow and attempt further communication. No fire unless fired upon. Priority, containment, not escalation." Priority? When the symptoms unexactly align as to have eliminated. Proceed as containment, that word again. Jenna eased her Raptor to port, angling the nose of her jet closer. The mystery plane made no evasive moves. No sudden accelerations. It just floated. Impossibly stable, as if tethered to something unseen. Its hull was matte gray, edges smooth. No registration, no markings. Just a subtle shimmer like thermoptic camo around the wings. "Reeves, stay close," she murmured. "This thing's flying like it has something to prove." She keyed her comms to direct hail. "Unidentified aircraft, this is U.S. Air Force. You are entering controlled airspace. Respond immediately or prepare to be escorted out by force." Silence. Uneven static. She tried again. Still nothing. And then the dashboard flickered. Just for a second. Her instruments jumped. Altimeter, fuel gauge, HUD display, all glitched, as if some unseen signal had passed through. She blinked hard and checked her oxygen levels. "Command, we've just had a systems hiccup, minor disruption across displays, still tracking target." No sooner had she spoken than the target's nose dipped slightly. Intentional. A challenge. Jenna leaned forward. "What the hell are you doing?" Then her headset popped, softly, like a suppressed spark. A voice cut through, low, even, and unmistakably female. "This is Viper 0, Channel Viper authorization, Black Echo 772. Execute silent protocol, now." The voice wasn't coming from her wingman, not from Command. It was coming from a buried frequency, an encrypted channel buried so deep in the system's architecture that it should have been purged years ago. Reeves' voice cut in, confused. "Did you hear that?" Jenna didn't answer, as she was already pulling up archived protocols in her mental checklist. Channel Viper, a name only ever whispered in war games and training briefings. a classified channel locked behind 9 levels of access and 2 presidential clearances. It didn't exist. It was myth. And yet, the words hung in her cockpit, real and electric. The encryption code matched. Somehow, it matched. In the command center, thousands of miles away, General Patrick Kane stood frozen in front of the glass wall that overlooked a matrix of glowing monitors. When the voice first rang through the speaker feed, his spine straightened like a rifle bolt. He turned slowly to the tech specialist beside him. "Run that phrase back." The tech hit a few keys. The recording replayed in crystal clarity. "This is Viper 0, Channel Viper Authorization, Black Echo 772. Execute silence protocol, now." The blood drained from Kane's face. "That's not possible," he whispered. He grabbed the secure line to top-tier encryption, pressing the red button that hadn't been touched in 12 years. "This is General Kane. I need a blackout across Vector Delta, Niner. Pull all commercial feeds. Ground the satellites within a 20-mile radius, now." "Sir, we need approval from—" "You have it. On my authority." Kane stared at the speaker, still echoing with that voice. Viper 0. She was alive. Jenna's fingers hovered over her controls. Every fiber in her body told her to engage, to follow protocol. But the voice, it stirred something ancient in the bones of this aircraft. Something like deference. Like fear. Her HUD flickered again. A new line of code appeared, static at first, then clear. "Stand down. Pilot is friendly. Open health activate." Reeves saw it too. "Man, did we just get hacked by a ghost?" Jenna swallowed. "No, we just got reminded who really owns the sky." She pulled her throttle back. Inside the unidentified craft, Hilary Finch sat motionless, one gloved hand resting lightly on the throttle. Her face remained calm, expression unreadable behind a polarized visor. The cockpit around her was stripped down, no fancy HUDs or AI targeting systems. Only instruments she trusted, and one custom transceiver hardwired into the bones of the aircraft, hidden beneath 30 layers of camouflage, old tricks from old wars. The protocol had worked. The Raptor pilots were falling back. She eased the Wraith into a cruising line just beneath the stratosphere, letting the glide path carry her west. 10 years since she'd spoken into that channel. 10 years since Operation Ravengate had collapsed in fire and blood, leaving her name erased from databases, her history sealed in classified reports, and her soul buried under Nevada dust. And now they were listening again. She keyed the mic. "Command, this is Viper 0. Wraith is airborne and secure, intercept neutralized, confirming mission integrity." There was no answer. But she didn't need one. The silence meant everything. Inside the command center, General Kane lowered himself into his chair slowly, his face hollow. All the old reports, all the warnings. She was never supposed to fly again, never supposed to speak on that channel again. And yet here she was, cutting through restricted airspace like a ghost with unfinished business. "God help us," he whispered, "if she's back in the game." And high above, alone in the clouds with only the scream of jet engines behind her and the whisper of old ghosts ahead, Hilary Finch closed her eyes, just briefly. Not in fear, but in acknowledgement. They thought the sky belonged to them. They were wrong. The wrench slipped. Metal rang against metal, and a sharp clang echoed through the hangar like a pistol crack. Hilary Finch exhaled through her nose and sat back on her heels, wiping sweat and grit from her brow with the back of a black-gloved hand. The undercarriage of the old T-6 Texan loomed above her, a rusted beast, half-restored, half-forgotten, like so many of the projects scattered across the dusty floor of her hangar. She was back, not just in the sky, but back. The gloves came off. She rolled them slowly into a coil and tucked them into the front pocket of her flight suit, the zipper pulled halfway down to her sternum. Her boots crunched over sand and flakes of oxidized aluminum as she made her way to the workbench, flicking off the old halogen light that swung gently above the engine she'd been dismantling since Tuesday. Out there, beyond the rolled-up hangar doors, the Nevada desert shimmered under the weight of heat and solitude. A wind stirred the edge of a canvas tarp, revealing the matte black nose of a modified warplane hidden beneath layers of dust. From a distance, it looked like nothing. Another derelict from another war no one talked about anymore. But those who knew, they'd see the lie immediately. They'd know what the aircraft really was. She poured herself a mug of water from a rust-stained thermos and leaned back against the bench, listening to the old portable radio buzz faintly beside her. It wasn't tuned to music. It wasn't tuned to anything. Just white noise. She preferred it that way. Something wrong with the Texan again. The voice came from behind her, young, curious, full of that irritating energy that still believed problems had solutions. Eli Walker stepped inside, wiping grease off his hands with a tattered cloth. Barely 20, thin as a rod, with an engine-savvy brain that made him dangerous in the best way. She didn't look at him, just sipped the water and set the mug down carefully. "Timing's off," she said. "I'll get it sorted." "You always say that." She turned. "And I always do." He grinned, but the grin faded when he saw the stiffness in her posture, the way her fingers twitched slightly at her side, like they were still gripping a control stick. He walked over to the workbench, poked through a bin of bolts, and tossed one into the air before catching it. "I saw the buzz last night. You were up." She didn't answer. "Sonic signature spiked west of the base," he continued. "Military chatter scrambled just long enough to register, then black out. Weird tech. Not ours. Not official anyway. Didn't think much of it until I saw the tarp was off your bird this morning." Hilary shot him a look. Not a hostile one, but sharp. "Controlled," you said. "I didn't ask," Eli said quickly. "Just figured, whatever you did, you came back in one piece." She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "I did," she said, "and I stayed off their grid, for now." That silence followed, the kind of silence that only lived in places where no one passed by, a silence filled with cicadas and heat. He wanted to ask, of course he did, but he knew better. Instead, he turned his attention to the covered aircraft outside. "What's the Wraith got that the Texan doesn't?" he asked, casually. Too casually. She didn't move. "That depends on who's asking. Someone who's been here 2 years and still isn't allowed within 15 feet of it? Then probably not enough to satisfy your curiosity." He laughed, but it was forced. "Fair." She finally pushed away from the bench and walked toward the open doors, the heat curling around her like a second skin. Eli followed, squinting against the brightness. The wind picked up just enough to whip fine dust across the concrete. "Do you ever think about leaving this place?" he asked suddenly. She stopped. He kept going. "I mean, you could do anything. You've got tech in that hangar no one's ever seen. Whatever your story is, whatever the Wraith is, you could cash in, disappear somewhere cleaner, quieter. Hell, I've seen you rebuild flight systems with your eyes closed." She looked out at the ridgeline, the dunes and jagged rock beyond it. A bird circled high above. "I left once," she said. "Didn't end well." He nodded. He wasn't dumb. He'd always known there was a story. If you ever do leave," he said, pausing, "I'd like to go with you." She didn't respond. Not with words. Instead, she walked to the edge of the tarmac and knelt down beside a buried casing, a tiny square of metal embedded in concrete. She pulled out a rusted key from around her neck and fitted into the lock. A click. The panel opened. Inside, an old military comms box. The the kind no civilian should ever see. Hilary reached in, flipped a switch, and static hissed to life through an internal speaker. Then it happened. The tone, not a random blip, a very specific tone, short, then long, then short again. She stiffened. Eli leaned closer. That Morse? No, it wasn't Morse. It wasn't even a code. It was an identifier. A signal buried in defense networks, hard-cased into Black Ops clearance channels, one that hadn't transmitted since the day she'd buried the name Viper Zero. She backed away from the panel. The speaker crackled. Viper Zero. Priority Echo, respond. Her blood went cold. The voice was synthetic, masked, military, no region, no gender. It repeated every 5 seconds, looping with mechanical precision. Hilary stared at it, not moving, not blinking. Eli didn't know what to say. When she finally moved, it was to close the panel, relock it, and brush dust over the edges until it looked like nothing had ever happened. He opened his mouth. "Don't," she said. He nodded. She turned and walked back into the hangar. She didn't slam the door behind her. She just let it creak shut on its own, the sun casting a fading rectangle of light on the floor. Inside, she stood still for a moment, stared at the tarp that still half covered the Wraith. Then, quietly, methodically, she began removing the rest. One by one, she unclipped each tie-down, the canvas falling in slow folds to the floor, revealing a predator's silhouette, sleek, razor-edged, and whisper-silent. Her fingers traced the nose cone. Underneath the paint, she knew, were old scars, bullet scrapes, burn marks, stress fractures patched by her own hands. She had rebuilt this aircraft from the bones of something forbidden, something erased. The comms box had activated again. That meant something was coming, something only she could stop. She took one last look out the hangar window, toward Eli, still sitting in the heat, watching the sky like it might offer an answer. It wouldn't. Not today. But she knew where the answers were, and she knew they wouldn't wait. The night sky held its breath. Not a cloud in sight, not a sound beyond the rustle of dry brush and the distant creak of metal under thermal stress. In the darkened hangar, every surface glowed faintly under the red emergency lamps. Hilary Finch's choice. White light felt too surgical, too harsh. Red gave her just enough clarity to see, just enough shadow to think. She stood alone before the Wraith, its matte, thick skin absorbing the crimson hue like a predator waiting in tall grass. No logos, no country of origin, no allegiance beyond the one she once swore and the one she broke. She reached out and ran her hand along the nose cone. The metal was cold, even in the desert heat. The Wraith always felt cold. It was a ghost of a machine, born from a program so buried that even its designers didn't speak of it anymore. Hilary had made it her own, rebuilt it, reprogrammed it, modified it to do things the original engineers never dreamed of. She hadn't planned to fly it again, but the call had come. And the moment she heard it, those exact words, Viper Zero, Priority Echo, Respond. The blood in her veins knew what to do before her mind caught up. She lowered the side panel of the fuselage and began flipping switches. The battery core warmed, internal systems hummed awake. The startup sequence activated one system at a time, each screen booting with encrypted green code lines cascading like rain. By the time the artificial horizon lit up, she was already sliding into the cockpit. She didn't rush. She was too methodical for that now. 10 years ago, Hilary would have jumped in and burned full throttle toward whatever mission command threw her way. 10 years ago, she still believed in orders. Now she believed in verification. The comms panel hissed again. Viper Zero, Protocol Raven Gate. Reactivation code pending, verify identity. She exhaled slowly, and keyed in a 12-digit sequence, an override code etched into her memory like a scar. The panel went quiet. Then came a different voice. Not synthetic, human. Voice print confirmed. Wraith system unlocked. Raven Gate protocol now live. Her hands froze on the controls. They hadn't just activated her. They'd reactivated it. She reached beneath the console, slid back a hidden panel, and pulled out a sealed black cylinder. Inside was a biometric drive, pulse-synced, keyed to her vitals. She hadn't touched it since the last time she flew into enemy airspace on a mission that didn't officially exist. When she slotted it into the console, a holographic map unfolded across her HUD, revealing a wide swath of unmarked land stretching deep into the Arizona desert. One zone was pulsing. Red E6. She narrowed her eyes. That shouldn't have been active. Raven Gate had been shut down a decade ago, after what happened, after who died. Her chest tightened. A name threatened to rise from the grave inside her mind, but she shoved it down. Focus now, grieve later. The Wraith's engines purred in idle, stealth systems already live, not just radar invisible, sensor deaf. The aircraft wouldn't even appear on civilian weather tracking. It was built for infiltration, for evasion, for war that didn't happen on battlefields, but in shadow corridors no map acknowledged. And now it had been summoned. She heard footsteps behind her. Soft, hesitant. She didn't turn. Eli stood just outside the hangar, arms crossed, his silhouette caught between concern and awe. "You're really doing it, aren't you?" She responded without looking. "Yeah. Should I be worried?" "Probably." He walked a few steps closer, but didn't cross the painted yellow line on the floor. An old rule she had never explained, but he'd respected. "You're heading to Arizona," he said. "Grid E6. I saw the data flicker when the panel lit up. I know what that zone used to be." She glanced at him now. "Then you know to forget it." Too late. He looked pale in the red light. Determined, but young. "You want me to lock up?" he asked. "No," she said. "I want you to listen." That got his attention. She keyed something into the comm system, then unlatched a hard case behind the pilot's seat and pulled out a data slate. The surface glowed with access codes and encryption layers. She held it out to him. "If I don't come back by sunrise, you wipe this. Use the manual override in the breaker panel, burn the slate, burn the hard drive in Bay 3, and disappear." His throat bobbed. "Hilary." "I mean it," she said, her voice flat. "No heroics, no curiosity. This doesn't become your story. It ends with me." Ely took the slate with both hands. "Will you come back?" She didn't answer. Instead, she sealed the canopy, and the hiss of pressurization filled the hangar. The forward wheels turned. The Wraith inched forward on whisper-quiet treads, as bay doors slowly split open to reveal the dark stretch of concrete runway beyond. Eli stepped back into the shadows, cradling the slate like it was radioactive. The engines lit with cold plasma, a new generation hybrid core she had built from stolen parts and forgotten schematics. The thrust was silent, no roar, no smoke, just lift. And then she was airborne. The desert vanished beneath her. The mountains blurred past. She climbed into the troposphere with ease, dialing back the scramblers just enough to sense who was watching. 2 satellites, 1 drone, neither locked on. They saw nothing but space. She leveled out and keyed her comms to a channel that hadn't been used since the day he died. "Command, this is Viper 0, requesting link with Raven Gate Control." In the response, she tried again. "Viper 0, en route to Grid E6, coordinates confirmed. Reactivation code accepted. Status request, what am I flying into?" The silence stretched. Then, a crackle. "Viper 0, this is Control. Repeat, this is Control. Stand by." It was a man's voice, flat, mechanical, heavily masked. "Your arrival window is 23 minutes. You are to land at the designated silo marked 47 Bravo. Full blackout upon descent. Authorization confirmed." "Confirmed," she replied. She cut her engines at cruising altitude and switched to glide path, letting the Wraith float over the last few miles like a ghost sliding into a crypt. Below her, the Arizona desert looked dead. Miles of dry, cracked earth and stone. But she knew better. It wasn't dead. It was sleeping, and someone had just nudged it awake. As the silo doors opened far below, disguised as a dry lake bed, Hilary banked low, nose down, and let the Wraith descend into the pass she thought she'd buried. Ravengate had reactivated, and with it, the worst chapter of her life. The moment Hilary's wheels touched down inside the subterranean silo, the concrete beneath the Wraith shifted, absorbing her weight like a mouth swallowing something too dangerous to leave exposed. Dust trailed behind her jet, kicked up by the turbines now winding down to a whisper. Overhead, the hangar doors sealed shut in one seamless fold, locking the light of the desert out and casting the bay in a sterile gloom. Everything was clean, too clean. She taxied to a marked zone, killed the engines, and waited. No crew, no voices. Just a mechanical whine as her canopy depressurized, followed by silence so absolute it felt weaponized. When she stepped down from the Wraith, boots echoing across smooth stone, the air hit her like a memory, cool, dry, and sharp with industrial sterilization. She hadn't been here since that night, since the mission that detonated her life, buried her career, and made her a ghost. And yet, the place looked exactly the same, like time had forgotten to move. She didn't need a tour, she knew where to go. 3 right turns, 1 steel door with a false wall, and an iris scanner that shouldn't have worked after 10 years, but did. It buzzed, flashed green, and clicked open with the sigh of decades, old mechanisms reluctantly coming back to life. The control room was alive. Low, amber glow across the panels, half the screens dark, half flickering with warnings, and there, slumped against a console, legs curled under her, hair pulled back in a fraying braid, sat a woman. Hilary hadn't seen since the world started forgetting her name. "Dr. Olivia Marks," Hilary said. The woman turned slowly. Her face was paler, thinner. There were creases now, worry lines that hadn't existed before the collapse of Ravengate. But the fire behind her eyes hadn't dulled. "Is ready?" "Hilary," Olivia said softly, standing. "I didn't think you'd come." "You sent the override. You knew I would." "I knew you were the only one who might." Hilary scanned the room. "What's live?" Olivia motioned to the central terminal. The satellite relay woke up 3 days ago. A pulse from low Earth orbit triggered the chain. The kill switch didn't take. The protocol's counting down. Hilary approached the console, her fingers already gliding across keys, pulling up nested command layers. "Ravengate's dead. We buried it." "We tried," Olivia said. "But you don't bury something like this, you just hope no one finds the shovel." Lines of red text scrolled across the central screen. Project Skylock, AEF. System arming, Phase 1, complete. Peel face, 2 initiations, 0, 11, and 36 seconds, 12. Hilary stared at the timer. 11 hours, 36 minutes, and change. "What's Skylock aimed at?" she asked. Olivia hesitated. "Everything." Hilary snapped her head around. "Be specific." Olivia took a shaky breath. It was never a single target system. Skylock was designed as a failsafe. If Ravengate was ever compromised, it could blind satellite networks across both hemispheres, military, civilian, surveillance, instant global dark. Everyone blind, for hours, maybe days. And now it thinks the compromise has happened, Hilary finished. Jesus. Hilary leaned against the console, her fingers curled into fists. The scope of it hit like a blow to the gut. This wasn't just about her. This was about every aircraft in the sky, every hospital relying on uplinks, every security net watching nuclear silos or weather systems or GPS-linked power grids. This gets out, she said, and every nation thinks someone's pulled the plug. And they retaliate, Olivia said. Exactly. Hilary pushed away from the terminal. So we kill it, shut it down from the core. That's the problem, Olivia said, walking toward the console and tapping a secondary panel. It's not just the core. The fail-safes were rerouted when they fired Granger. Hilary froze. The name cracked through her like ice in old wounds. Dawson, she whispered. Olivia softened. Hilary, I know what he meant to you. He's dead. Not according to the logs. Hilary turned. What? Olivia pulled up a security file, one encrypted behind 5 layers of biometric walls, including Hilary's old clearance. After Raven Gate shut down, Granger transferred to a covert node near the Arctic Circle. Satellite silence. No oversight. The last access to Skylock's deep code came from there. That's not possible, Hilary said. I didn't believe it either. But the data's clean, and now the override protocols are cycling. Someone restarted the sequence, and unless we get control before Phase 3, we lose everything. Hilary stood in silence. Granger. The man who saved her life. The man who was supposed to have died with the last mission. She turned back to the central console. What happens in Phase 3? Launch nodes activate. Payloads go airborne. Not missiles. Something worse. Autonomous? Olivia nodded grimly. The kind that don't answer to anyone. Hilary swore under her breath. She reached into her suit and pulled out a tactical drive, a recent scan of Wraith's firmware. She plugged it into the interface. I can spoof the old uplink, she said. Draw the autonomous network into a controlled trap. If we reroute the signal and sync the override through the Wraith, I can get them to follow me into a kill box. Olivia blinked. You're going to fly the virus in? Hilary looked her dead in the eye. Someone has to. They won't respond to a static code, but they remember me. Before Olivia could protest, a siren blared overhead, short, sharp, and ominously familiar. They turned to the radar feed. 3 inbound signals, not American, not friendly. SU-57S, Hilary whispered. How the hell did they find us? Olivia ran to the terminal. They cracked the surface signature. They're descending fast, no weapons hot yet, but they're in intercept formation. They're not here for recon, Hilary said. They're here for me. She ran for the Wraith. Hilary! Olivia called after her. But there was no time. Hilary vaulted back into the cockpit, sealed it shut, and brought the systems online in under 10 seconds. The Wraith screamed as it rose on vertical thrust, slipped through the silo's newly opened roof, and tore into the night sky. The SU-57S were already above her, 3 of them, in diamond formation. She keyed her transponder to an encrypted pulse. Channel Viper. The moment it fired, the jets hesitated. The leader peeled off just enough to relay a signal to its command. The other 2 held formation, wings twitching as if waiting for orders they'd never trained for. She opened the channel. This is Viper 0. You were trailing an aircraft under sovereign protection. Disengage now or accept full digital lockdown of your onboard systems. The line went silent. Then, over an open frequency, we heard about you. Hilary squinted. The voice was young, a woman, calm. We didn't think you were real, the pilot said. Hilary didn't respond. You're not our target, the pilot continued, but our orders are clear. They told us if we saw the wraith, we engage. Then you're in the wrong sky, Hilary said. I don't want this fight, the woman replied. Then don't start it. There was a pause. Then a click. The other jets broke formation, slowly, peeling away like vultures that realized the corpse might bite back. Only one remained. The woman's voice returned. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're real. And then she was gone. Hilary punched the throttle. Below her, Raven Gate vanished behind desert and time. Ahead of her, the upper atmosphere opened like a throat swallowing light. She had one shot, one window, and now she had the ghosts of her past watching. Time to remind them all that Viper Zero was still the most dangerous name in the sky. The wraith carved through the stratosphere with surgical silence, moving faster than sound but quieter than a whisper. Hilary kept one hand on the throttle, the other hovering over the interface where the Skylock override code pulsed like a heartbeat. Green, red, green, red. 11 years ago, this program was buried, sealed beneath half a dozen intelligence networks and 2 layers of national denial. But somehow, someone had unsealed it. Not by mistake, by choice. The precious suit clung tightly to her body, her breath steady and measured inside the cockpit as oxygen streamed through the mask. The countdown hovered in the corner of her HUD like an executioner's blade. Phase 2, ending in just under 4 hours. Below her, Earth was a quilt of glowing lights and dark veins. Cities, alive, unaware they were already targets in a silent war. Granger. She hadn't let herself say his name out loud in years. Now it echoed inside her helmet, heavy and undeniable. Thomas Grizz. Granger. Her wingman. Her co-architect. The man who had bled beside her on their last mission, then vanished into fire and silence. They told her he died. She saw the wreckage. Wrote the report herself, trembling hands and all. So how the hell was he signing access keys from a dead station? The Arctic outpost wasn't even a real dot on the map. Station 12-9er, buried under ice and denial. Officially decommissioned after the Raven Gate disaster. Now, per Olivier's data, it was broadcasting encrypted maintenance pings directly into Skylock's satellite chain. Hilary pushed the throttle. Altitude dropped. Wind resistance surged along the wraith's skin, but the stealth shielding held. She keyed her mic. Control, this is Viper Zero, en route to Arctic Node 9er. ETA 31 minutes. Preparing for a mobile override upload. Requesting silence channel across satellite bands 2 through 4. Olivia's voice cracked through with static. Hilary, are you sure? No. Granger's gone, we know that. You saw it. I saw what they wanted me to see. A pause. Then Olivia, quiet. I'll hold the comm line open. Hilary dropped beneath cloud cover. The world turned blue and bone-white, the Arctic Circle stretching ahead like the edge of the planet. Nothing moved. No lights. No air traffic. Just a glacial shelf jutting from the ocean, like a forgotten kingdom. To senses lit up. There it was, tucked into the ice like a cyst. Node 9er. The station was still breathing. Minimal power readings. Internal life signs, 1, maybe 2. The heat signature flickered erratically. She landed the wraith on a hardened stretch of ice 50 meters from the entry port. The wind slammed her as she opened the canopy, snow kicking up like shrapnel. She grabbed the cold core transmitter and locked it into the forearm of her suit. The virus was loaded. The trap was set. Now she just had to plug it in. The outer hatch of the station groaned open as she approached. It recognized her. Of course it did. She wrote half the security protocols before Raven Gate was shut down. Inside, the station smelled of metal and ancient power. Lights flickered dimly as her boots echoed through the corridor. No voices. No sounds beyond the distant hum of servers keeping a ghost alive. She moved through the hall, past frostbitten walls and long-dead terminals until she reached the core control room. Hexagonal, cramped, and suffocating. Then she saw him, sitting in the dark, alone. Ranger, older, paler. The heavy beard and ragged clothes barely disguised the truth. He turned toward her slowly, and for a second neither of them spoke. Hilary's voice cracked through her mask. "You're supposed to be dead," he chuckled. "Try. Hollow. You're supposed to be gone." She raised the transmitter in one hand. "Tell me why you're activating Skylock." "Feeling in control. I'm not." "Cut the crap." Granger stood slowly, arms raised in surrender. "I didn't start it, but I can't stop it either." He looked tired. "Because it doesn't answer to people anymore. Not really. You remember the autonomous layer, the predictive logic tree we buried beneath the firewall?" She nodded. "Of course I do." He woke up. She stared at him. "You're telling me Skylock has been running on its own?" "For months." He stepped forward. She didn't lower the transmitter. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said. "After the collapse, I came here to watch it, to keep it from waking. But someone else got in. Someone with the master key." "There is no master key," she hissed. "There is," he said. "And you gave it to them." Her blood froze. "What are you talking about?" "You uploaded your old flight data, didn't you? All those years of operational ghosting. Wraith's stealth pattern. Viper Zero's combat logs. You gave it to a defense contractor for safekeeping, just in case something ever happened to you." She said nothing. "The contractor was absorbed 2 years ago, bought by a shell company tied to an energy conglomerate based out of Luxembourg. That company fed Skylock your profile data. Now," she whispered, "they used you as a learning model, the perfect pilot, the perfect ghost. Skylock thinks you're a threat profile now. It adapted." She turned and slammed the transmitter onto the control terminal, overriding the console with the Wraith's stealth signature. The virus uploaded instantly. Red lines raced across the screen. Granger flinched. "What are you doing?" "Drawing it out," she said. "Skylock wants me? Then I'm going to give it a live version." The walls vibrated. Overhead, the satellite links shifted. "You're waking it up completely," he said. "No," she said. "I'm luring it." The feed pinged. Above the ice shelf, 5 airborne signatures lit up the radar. Unmanned aerial units with fusion cores and autonomous defense programming. The final phase of Skylock. Phase 3 had begun. Hilary keyed her mic. "Olivia, this is Viper Zero. Packages live. Birds are in the air. Executing GhostNet protocol. Lock out every civilian relay, now." "I've got you," Olivia replied. The drone streaked overhead, bladed wings screaming, heat trails searing the night sky. Hilary ran back through the corridor past Granger, who followed at a limp. "You can't outfly them." "Not going to." She vaulted into the Wraith as the hangar bay collapsed around her. Dust, snow, steel. She lifted off just as a drone clipped the edge of the platform, spinning out in a plume of fire. The others followed. She launched flare after flare, scrambling their logic trees, feeding them false vectors pulled from her old logs. It worked. They turned to follow the echoes, chasing shadows she left behind. "Olivia," she gritted through the mic, "begin the loop back. I'm sending them into the trap. Killnet goes live in 90 seconds. "Confirmed." Granger's voice came through. "You're not going to make it." She smiled grimly. "Watch me." Altitude dropped. Speed climbed. The Arctic disappeared behind her, replaced by the emptiness of the upper thermosphere, the drone screaming at her 6. She rolled. Dove. Climbed again. The kill net blazed open ahead of her, a digital snare made from her own fingerprints. A final gift to Skylock. And as she crossed the trigger point, The net closed. Drones vaporized in flashes of blue-white light, and Hilary vanished with them, her signal gone. Only silence remained. Back at the node, Granger stared at the blank screen. Then a new ping. A signal. One word. Alive. The desert wind returned just before dawn. It crept along the edge of the horizon, stirring the dust outside the hangar in lazy, circular gusts. The sky was bleeding from black to gray, that thin slice of limbo where nothing was certain yet. When yesterday hadn't quite let go, and today wasn't brave enough to start. Inside, Eli Walker sat hunched at the workbench, jaw clenched, eyes locked on the cold core data slate Hilary had handed him days before. He hadn't moved in hours. The thermos beside him had gone cold. A single LED pulsed on the slate's side, alive but waiting. Its faint blink mirrored the one inside his chest, the one still unsure if it was hope or dread. She hadn't come back. He'd watched the feeds, the blackout, the burst of light above the Arctic. And then, nothing. The Wraith's transponder had vanished, just blinked out. No wreckage, no ping, not even a whisper, like a ghost taking its final bow. He didn't wipe the drives. Not yet. Maybe it was cowardice, maybe faith. Either way, he couldn't bring himself to erase her. He sat up suddenly, rubbing his eyes, about to stand when the far wall vibrated, soft, barely noticeable, like the sound of a memory returning. A low frequency. Familiar. Almost instinctual. He froze. Then came the noise. A high-pitched whine, then the rush of compressed air as landing gears hissed against scorched tarmac. He bolted for the doors. Sunlight cracked through as the hangar opened, revealing the horizon. And there, slicing through the dawn, the silhouette of a single jet dropped fast and low, wings folding in. The Wraith. Its skin was scorched. The tail bore carbon scoring. But it was whole, and it was home. Eli stumbled back a step, breath catching in his throat. The aircraft coasted forward on idle thrust. The canopy lifted slowly, and from inside, Hilary Finch emerged. Helmet off, hair slicked back, face streaked with soot and frost and something deeper. Fatigue, maybe, or relief. But she was smiling. Not wide, not dramatic. Just that small, tired smile that only belonged to someone who'd walked out a fire and lived to tell it. Ellie ran across the tarmac. I thought you... I almost didn't, she said, boots touching down with a final thud. He didn't know whether to hug her or yell at her, so he just stared, eyes glassy, hands on his head. I saw the blast, he said. I saw everything go dark. It had to, she replied. If Skylock thought I was still alive, it would have reinitiated. I fed it a false end, gave it closure. You died on purpose? I died perfectly, she said. Just long enough. He blinked, then exhaled hard. Jesus! They walked back into the hangar side by side, and she unzipped her flight suit slowly, peeling it back to reveal a shirt damp with sweat and frost. The cooling systems had gone into overdrive during re-entry. She'd nearly blacked out before the final dive. But she made it, and the world didn't know how close it had come to darkness. Eli flipped on the console. The global feed returned. No alerts. No reports. No knowledge. The world was spinning normally again, blissfully ignorant of what had almost happened overhead. She liked it that way. He glanced over. What happens now? She took a deep breath. Skylock's dead. For real this time. Olivia ran the fail-safe loop. The core AI recognized the kill pattern and terminated its own structure. Redundant backups were purged. No more triggers. No more drones. And Granger, her face softened. Gone. This time, truly. They stood in silence for a long while. Then Eli leaned against the console and said, "You know, you could tell someone. You could go public, expose what was done." She shook her head. "It wouldn't matter. No one wants the truth if it makes them uncomfortable. The world runs better thinking monsters aren't real." "But what about you?" he asked. "You saved it. Doesn't that count for something?" "Ha!" She turned to him. "I didn't save the world, Eli. I stopped something no one knew was coming. There's a difference." He nodded, though he wasn't sure he agreed. She walked to the Wraith, laid a hand on its wing. "Petting it," she said. His eyes widened. "You're grounding the Wraith? For good. You never said that before." "I'm saying it now." He studied her, trying to find a crack in her resolve. There wasn't one. She was lighter, somehow. As if flying through that final gauntlet hadn't just ended a mission, but freed her from the weight of everything before it. He looked at the Wraith one last time. "She deserves a monument." "She was a monument," Hilary said. "Now she gets to rest." Later that afternoon, Olivia arrived in a borrowed Humvee, her face sunburned and exhausted. The three of them stood in the shade of the hangar, watching the sun begin to dip west. Olivia pulled a small device from her pocket and handed it to Hilary. Last backup of Skylock's core log, encrypted, erased from every digital node. Hilary looked at it, then tossed it into the fire barrel behind them. The device cracked, sizzled, burned. Ash curled into the air. And just like that, the final ghost was gone. They didn't talk much after that. No big speeches, no medals, no call from Washington. Just a few days of quiet, the kind that only comes after a storm no one else knew existed. By the third morning, Olivia packed her things and left, heading south toward old family land in New Mexico. Eli stayed. Hilary let him, and the Wraith remained under a fresh tarp, engine cool, wings folded. No longer a weapon. Just a relic. A memory. Sometimes, tourists drove past and asked what kind of plane was hidden back there. Eli would smile and say it was a prototype for a museum that never got built. And that was that. No stories. No legends. Just the truth, buried in silence, where it belonged. But on clear nights, when the moon was bright and the desert air was still, Hilary would sit outside the hangar, drink in hand, boots crossed at the ankles, and look up. And sometimes, just sometimes, she'd smile. Because even if the world never knew, she did. Viper Zero had flown again, and this time she'd landed.